On a bright July afternoon in 1989, travelers streamed through the doors of Denver's Stapleton International Airport, tickets in hand, luggage trailing behind them. Summer was at its peak. Blue skies stretched wide over Colorado, and the warm air carried the scent of freshly cut grass from nearby fields. United Airlines Flight 232, a wide-bodied McDonnell Douglas DC-10, waited at the gate, its polished silver fuselage glinting in the midday sun. For most of the 296 people preparing to board, this flight was routine. Families with children were heading home after vacation. Business travelers chatted on brick-sized cell phones or flipped through paper agendas. Couples sipped coffee while scanning departure screens. Inside the terminal, gate agents smiled and called boarding groups, their voices carrying a calm efficiency born of repetition. There was no hint that history would soon etch this flight's number into aviation lore. As passengers stepped onto the jet bridge, cool air from the cabin spilled out to meet them. They settled into beige cloth seats, sliding carry-ons into overhead bins. Toddlers pressed noses to oval windows, marveling at service trucks trundling below. Flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisles, greeting everyone with practiced warmth. Up front, 3 experienced aviators ran through pre-flight checklists, their voices steady over the hum of avionics. Captain Al Haynes, a man with over 3 decades of flying behind him, commanded quiet respect. At his side sat First Officer William Records, scanning instruments with practiced focus, and Flight Engineer Dudley Dvorak, monitoring hydraulic pressure and fuel gauges. Beyond the airport, the Midwest lay basking under a patchwork of sunlit fields and drifting clouds. The route to Chicago was familiar, east over Nebraska, Iowa, then on toward Illinois. Nothing on that flight plan hinted at
serious danger. As the last bags were loaded, the crew prepared the DC-10 for pushback. Passengers buckled seatbelts, flipped through in-flight magazines, or leaned back with a sigh of relief that they'd made it aboard on time. The jet rolled smoothly from the gate, engines low and steady. Through cockpit windows, the runway shimmered in the heat haze. With clearance from air traffic control, Haynes advanced the throttles. The aircraft surged forward, wheels clattering across concrete as acceleration pinned passengers gently into their seats. In moments, Flight 232 lifted gracefully into the clear Colorado sky. Below, the city shrank to a patchwork of rooftops and roads. Ahead stretched a corridor of pale blue, tinged with gold from the afternoon sun. Inside, a quiet sense of security prevailed, the kind unique to air travel when strangers trust unseen professionals to carry them safely through the sky. None aboard could know that within an hour they would face an unimaginable challenge, one that would test every ounce of skill in the cockpit, every shred of courage in the cabin, and forever redefine what survival meant at 37,000 feet. As the DC-10 climbed away from Denver, the city shrank to a neat patchwork of streets and rooftops framed by the Rockies' jagged silhouette. A clear summer sky stretched endlessly above, painted in gentle shades of blue and pearl. Within minutes, Flight 232 leveled at cruising altitude, 37,000 feet over the quiet plains of Nebraska. Inside the cabin, calm reigned. Sunlight spilled through oval windows, scattering golden highlights across seatbacks and tray tables. A little boy traced the outline of clouds with his finger on the glass. 2 rows ahead, a pair of college students laughed over a shared set of headphones, their music barely audible over the low hum of the engines. Flight attendants moved easily through the aisles, distributing beverages and smiling at passengers settling into books, crossword puzzles, or quiet conversation. Their Navy uniforms and practiced confidence added to the sense that everything about this journey was routine. Up front, the cockpit mirrored that serenity. Captain Al Haynes glanced across the instrument panel, confirming readings that had become second nature over decades in the air. Beside him, First Officer William Records made notes on the flight plan, occasionally adjusting the autopilot. Behind them, Flight Engineer Dudley Dvorak scanned gauges for fuel flow and hydraulic pressure, his practiced eyes catching even minor fluctuations. The men exchanged casual comments, sports scores, a remark about the perfect weather, all underscored by the gentle hiss of radio traffic from air traffic control. Back in the cabin, a mother leaned toward her teenage daughter, pointing out the patchwork of farms passing below like a green and tan quilt. A business traveler unfolded the day's newspaper, its pages rustling softly in the climate-controlled air. Someone chuckled at a story shared across the aisle. Everything sucked. Easted stability, predictability, the reassuring rhythm of modern flight. For a moment, time itself seemed to stretch, suspended in the steady drone of engines and the faint shimmer of sunlight across the wings. The DC-10 had been designed for comfort and efficiency, its spacious cabin and wide windows creating a sense of openness rare among airliners of its era. Passengers often remarked on how smooth the ride felt, how quiet compared to smaller jets. Today was no exception. The air over the Great Plains was calm, free of turbulence or storm clouds. At the rear galley, attendants chatted as they prepared coffee pots, the aroma mingling with the faint scent of jet fuel lingering from boarding. Their voices carried an easy warmth, honed by hours of service on countless flights. To anyone observing, Flight 232 looked like the very definition of an ordinary journey. A mid-afternoon snapshot of life in transit, anonymous yet strangely intimate, a collection of strangers sharing a sealed world, high above the earth. No one could sense how fragile that serenity truly was. Beyond the tail, hidden deep inside the heart of the number 2 engine, forces were already gathering, tiny, invisible stresses in a spinning titanium disk. The seeds of a disaster no one aboard could imagine. For nearly an hour, Flight 232 had cruised serenely above the heartland. Below lay a patchwork of farms and towns, their outlines softened by summer haze. Inside the cockpit, routine continued. Instrument checks, quiet conversation, an occasional adjustment to the autopilot. The crew was relaxed, yet vigilant, maintaining the steady rhythm that defines professional flight. Then, at 3:16 p.m., serenity shattered. A deafening bang erupted from the tail, shaking the entire aircraft. Passengers felt an instant jolt, followed by an eerie vibration that ran through the floor and armrests. Overhead, bins rattled. A few startled travelers clutched their seats. In the cockpit, warning lights flared red across the panel, accompanied by the shrill tone of alarms. Captain Haynes gripped the controls, instinctively scanning instruments. First officer records called out, "We've lost the number 2," referring to the DC-10's tail-mounted engine. A quick glance confirmed it. Pressure on the center engine had dropped to 0. Almost simultaneously, the hydraulic gauges, the lifelines of the airplane's control surfaces, plunged toward empty. Hydraulics were the muscles of this massive jet, powering every surface that allowed it to climb, descend, or turn. The DC-10 had 3 separate systems, designed so that no single failure could disable them all. But the explosion that had torn apart the engine's titanium fan disc had also sent razor-sharp fragments slicing through the fuselage. All 3 hydraulic lines, routed side by side through the tail, were severed in an instant. Haynes and his crew moved fast, running through emergency checklists with calm precision. They attempted to restore pressure, but the needles stayed lifeless. The controls felt slack, disconnected from the wings and tail. Records tried the yoke. Nothing. The massive jet no longer responded. In the cabin, passengers looked around nervously as the plane began an uncommanded roll to the right. Some glanced at the flight attendants, whose composed faces belied a growing unease. Over the PA, a calm voice reassured everyone that the crew was addressing a technical issue. But in the cockpit, the reality was stark. They had no direct way to steer. Haynes keyed the radio to Sioux City approach. His voice was steady, clipped with focus. "United 232, we've lost all hydraulics." The controller hesitated, then asked if they required assistance. Haynes answered without drama. "Affirmative." The plane continued to descend, oscillating gently but unmistakably out of trim. Every few seconds,
The horizon tilted in the cockpit windows, a slow, ominous drift. Fitch, an off-duty training captain traveling as a passenger, made his way forward, offering help. Haynes welcomed him instantly. Extra minds would be essential. Smoke trailed faintly from the tail, visible to people on the ground far below. For those aboard, the situation remained surreal. A moment ago, they were cruising in calm air. Now the safety of nearly 300 souls hinged on ingenuity and calm in the face of the unthinkable.
The cockpit of United Flight 232 had shifted from routine to crisis management in a matter of seconds. Warning lights glowed like a constellation across the instrument panel. Hydraulic gauges, normally steady in the green, sat lifeless at 0. The yokes were heavy and unresponsive. Every textbook Haynes had ever studied insisted this situation was impossible. A total loss of hydraulics wasn't supposed to happen. But here it was. Haynes's voice was calm as he directed his crew. "Let's see if we have anything left." First Officer Records tried gentle inputs on the control column. The jet continued its slow right bank, indifferent to human effort. Behind them, Flight Engineer Dudley Dvorak scanned checklists, confirming the worst. Every hydraulic system reservoir was empty. A knock at the cockpit door drew their attention. Dennis Fitch, an off-duty DC-10 training captain who'd been sitting in the cabin, stepped forward. He had overheard snippets of radio calls and recognized something was terribly wrong. "Mind if I help?" he offered. Haynes nodded without hesitation. There was no room for pride now. The four men quickly assessed their options. Without hydraulics, the airplane's control surfaces, ailerons, elevators, rudder, were frozen. The only systems unaffected were the throttles for the two wing-mounted engines. If they advanced one engine and reduced power on the other, the resulting thrust imbalance might nudge the aircraft's heading or pitch. It was a crude solution, but their only one. Fitch settled into the jump seat, studying engine instruments. He suggested using asymmetric thrust to keep the wings level. Haynes and Records experimented, easing one throttle forward while pulling the other back. The DC-10 responded just barely, with a sluggish roll in the intended direction. It was progress, fragile and tentative. Meanwhile, Dvorak coordinated with Air Traffic Control, Sioux City, Iowa, offered a long runway and emergency services on standby. Controllers cleared surrounding airspace, preparing for an unprecedented arrival. In the cabin, attendants reassured passengers, though their voices were taut with professionalism under strain. They moved quickly, securing loose items and reviewing brace positions. Many travelers sensed something extraordinary was unfolding, though few grasped the severity. Back in the cockpit, sweat traced lines down foreheads despite cool airflow from overhead vents. The crew's concentration was absolute, adjusting throttles by fractions, monitoring airspeed, coordinating descent rates. Communication was crisp, stripped to essentials: headings, power settings, altitude calls. Fitch's hands hovered over the controls, ready to fine-tune at Haynes's command. Together, they coaxed the wounded DC-10 into a tentative stability, like taming a skittish animal. Each minute they kept the aircraft in the sky bought precious time. For rescue crews to assemble, for passengers to prepare, for hope itself to survive. Outside, the Iowa landscape spread beneath a pale blue sky, oblivious to the drama above. United Flight 232 was no longer simply flying. It was balancing on a knife's edge, sustained by teamwork, ingenuity, and a refusal to surrender to the impossible. While the pilots wrestled with throttles in the cockpit, another quiet battle was taking shape behind the reinforced door. Inside the wide cabin of Flight 232, nearly 300 strangers were about to face the unthinkable, and their courage would become part of aviation history. At first, there was only uncertainty. Passengers felt the gentle, irregular sway of the airplane and sensed the descent. A few caught sight of flight attendants moving with an unusual focus, securing carts, checking latches, scanning the rows with eyes that measured every detail. Something was wrong, yet the crew's composure steadied the room.
Lead Attendant Jan Brown stepped forward, voice clear and steady as she explained that the pilots were experiencing a control problem and that everyone needed to prepare for a difficult landing. Her calm words did more than any technical explanation could. They told people that professionalism and hope still guided the flight. The cabin filled with purposeful movement. Parents pulled children close, fastening belts snugly. Travelers helped seatmates who struggled with buckles or tray tables. An elderly man gently reassured a nervous teenager, speaking in a voice meant only for her. Passengers passed along instructions about the brace position: feet flat, head low, arms protecting the face. Attendants demonstrated, leaning forward between the seats so every row could see. They moved quickly but never lost gentleness, encouraging cooperation as they tightened straps and cleared the aisles of bags and magazines. Even those fighting fear sensed that unity mattered. The smallest gestures, a smile, a nod, anchored resolve. In the galleys, attendants secured coffee pots and equipment, then gathered at their jump seats, rehearsing safety commands one last time. Each knew the risks, but none wavered. Training had taught them that calm saves lives,
and their discipline radiated outward. Passengers, meanwhile, exchanged quiet promises. Couples squeezed hands, whispering reassurances. Some wrote brief notes on scraps of paper, folding them carefully into pockets. Children, sensing the gravity around them, clung to parents, yet found courage in their steady voices. Despite the tension, a sense of order prevailed. There was no chaos, no rush for exits, only determined preparation. The human instinct to protect, to comfort, and to face the unknown together overcame panic. Outside the windows, Iowa farmland unfolded in muted greens and golds, serene beneath the descending jet. Inside, hearts raced, but focus sharpened. Everyone understood the importance of these last moments before touchdown. The cabin of Flight 232 had become a quiet alliance of resolve. Passengers and crew joined in a single purpose: to meet whatever waited beyond the runway with dignity and strength.